Yeah. Hey. Yeah. Hey. Yeah. Hey. Yeah. 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 Hey.
What's going on, y'all? My name is Cody Tarleton, and this is a video that I've kind of been wanting to make for a while, but I finally have decided to take the time to sit down and record it. So here it is. There's gonna be the top ten motocross games. Here we go. We're gonna start off the old top 10 with in English is hard. We're gonna start off the top 10 with the 10th place, and that's gonna be good old Untamed. Now I'm going to start off by saying that the PS3 and PS2 versions are completely different games, and I'm going to be reviewing the PS2 version since it came out before the PS3 version, naturally. It really just felt like Unleashed 2, which really wouldn't be bad if it weren't for just the lack of fun tracks. I mean, they were all just fifth tapped off of everything, and it really just got boring. Corners really weren't that satisfying, especially the fact that you could just lean back and raw dog all the corners and just rail the nar off of it. But I will grant that the physics in the air were definitely an improvement from Unleashed, but it's really just not enough to push it up any higher in the ranks. Now for ninth, time to piss a bunch of people off, we got Alive. Now, just like Untamed, this one wasn't on PC, and also like Untamed, it was kind of just an unimpressive version of the previous MX vs. ATV title. There was an extreme lack of content in it. The stock tracks were just bad, except for the French tracks, which were a grind and a half to even get to. I never got the JS7 compound because I lost the paper that had the code like a complete and total idiot. However, from what I've seen, it is pretty baller. The SX tracks I played on a buddy's Xbox, and I have to say, they weren't very good. They were basically just slightly beefed up arena cross tracks, and I mean, they just didn't flow really well, in my opinion. But I will grant that Alive is graphically and physically better than the previous titles, but that's to be expected. It's newer. It's 5 years newer than Untamed. It's really honestly not that much better looking than Reflex, but there's only a 2-year difference between those two games' release. I feel like Alive was more of kind of THQ was trying to save their skin by getting a new game out, because it just didn't end up being all that good. Coming in the 8th spot, which is going to be our last MX vs. ATV game for a bit, is going to be Unleashed. Now, this is the game that got me through my childhood. Man, I have more hours in this game than I have in the various neighborhood girls. Not including Becky, of course. This was the first MX vs. ATV game, and oh my god, was it the best. It has a very in-depth track editor, hella dope stock tracks, a lot of stock tracks, and you can mod in the MX Unleashed tracks like buttery easy, dude. My god, this game was so good. You would never run out of content, dude. Even when I played it on PSP, and I obviously was only on the stock tracks, dude, I could just sit there for hours and have fun playing this game. I mean, obviously there are some issues as far as, outdated graphics and physics. I mean, it was an early 2000s game. It came out in 2005, and it still really has held up better than anything Nordic has made since they took over. In the 7th place position, I have MTX Moto Tracks. Man, you just can't beat this game's career mode. I mean, it had a pretty basic racing mode where you'd get sponsors from one random team and you'd have to run that bike for the whole season or till whenever you got a new offer. And you could also only run the gear that you're supported by, which that was pretty cool. You have to be sponsored by a gear company to run it. You can't go running somebody else's. But the racing, that's not really where the game shines. I mean, atop the janky physics and the below average graphics, there was a sick open world aspect in the free ride. That's where the magic happened, dude. You'd roll up on some bibba and he'd all of a sudden like have beef with you and want to race. And you'd race him and you'd shut him up. Maybe Cowboy Kenny rolls up and wants you to throw some fat schmeezers with him. You can go throw down and get some Bodo coin. Dude, you can jump Pastrana's house in this game, for God's sake. Dude, this game is sick. And dude, the X Games FMX, you do everything Pastrana did in his run, besides digging your bike into the water. Now, Motortracks also had a Dirtworks feature, which was custom tracks, and it was pretty cool, but it was super basic and had nothing on how in-depth Unleashed was. Coming in 6th, I have MXGP3. Now, this is a game that I never actually bought, but it has to be noted as one of Milestone's best games and the best MXGP game. The physics were a drastic improvement over the previous two titles. The graphics were beautiful. They had two strokes, which obviously is a huge plus. The tracks really weren't anything special, considering that, I mean, they're limited to the official MXGP tracks, but, I mean, they're still pretty good. I really do wish that Milestone would figure out a track editor for the MXGP series. I mean, the ability to make national tracks in-game, custom, you don't have to just play the, I don't know, how many is it, 19 stock tracks that they give you, I think. I mean, that just gets boring after a while. It's like what's so good about the MESX, you can make your own new content. But I don't know how they would add it in, but if they could, that would for sure make the next MXGP game a lot further up on the list. In fifth, I have MX Bikes. Now, this game isn't the hardest on the list, but it is definitely the one that I am the worst at. This is still sort of a beta game. Puboso, the developer, seems to have way too many games out to worry about one game. This ends up really hurting MX Bikes because, I mean, it's definitely by far the least popular game by Puboso, and really it's also one of the least popular games in the MX game community, which means a lack of content. So the user-created content in, say, Sim is coming out all the time because there's a lot of community members. But you want to get any kind of tracks, bikes, and gear, there's very few content creators in the MX Bikes community. And mods are also really hard to install, which I feel also scares a lot of people away. But as many negatives as I can come up with, you cannot deny that the physics in this game are pretty spot on. Now, this game could be a definite sim killer if it had just a better community, if it had a lot more support to it. I mean, I think it could definitely compete with Sim. Oh yeah, and the crashes, they're so funny. In fourth place, I'm going to have to put the original MESX. It had quite a few stock tracks and a ton of bike and rider customization. It also had physics that were definitely improved from MXGP3. And those things are all great, but in my opinion, not really where this game shines. It shines in the MotoTrack style of track editor. For being an arcade game track editor that uses preset pieces, the customization options were nearly endless. There was DLC, but I mean, it was mostly trash. The Monster Cup track had the least flow of any track, maybe besides San Diego. That track was garbage. There was a Compound DLC, which was super hot fire, and it got everybody dummy hyped up for MXGP Pro, and, you know, of course then we just got disappointed like my parents when I was born. In the third slot's going to be MESX2. This is the most recent Milestone game, and my god, is it a hot fire. The graphics and physics are yet again light years ahead of the previous installment. There is even more customization. The only real bad track I can find is Seattle. And the track editor is even more improved from the first. They've added a ton of new special sections. They got sand, they got gator pits, you can ride up into the freaking stands like they did in Detroit 2016, I think it was 16, it might have been 17. I don't really know, I'm trying to flow with this here. And like how they do in Vegas for the Monster Cup, you know, it's got a lot of cool stuff to it. And contrary to popular belief, I actually, I kind of like the DLC track. I mean, if you think about it, it's not going to have a bunch of big old cinders because they're going for the old school SX vibe. I mean, it's LA Coliseum, so they're going to kind of take it back into the little more mellow side of SX, like in the early 2000s, how it kind of was, and maybe maybe more of like a 90s vibe than the early 2000s, I'd say. Now, the multiplayer netcoding, I gotta say, it's a little better than all the other Milestone games have been. I used to, it was impossible to run collisions. You just couldn't run collisions, or else you would nut all over the place, dude. Now it's actually kind of funny. It's not as cancerous as it used to be. It's just, kind of funny because they're a little off. They're just like playing on a bad Hamachi server on Sim. Coming in second, we're going to have the second longest MX game, and obviously the single greatest MX versus ATV game ever, which is none other than Reflex. Now this right here is the game that revolutionized moto gaming. They introduced the Rider Reflex, which was the dual stock dual stick control setup. Now, this is basically what literally every motocross game besides MX Sim runs now. Besides revolutionary physics and controls, Reflex had some sick stock tracks with some big ol' senders. Now there were some pretty unrealistic SX tracks in that game, and that's what made it fun. Just hitting big ol' hits and just you know how it is. And once the game was released to PC, people realized, oh dog, we can make custom tracks. So then that's kind of just what took this game to a whole nother level, and that's why 10 years later, it is still one of the most popular motocross games played. Now for the one you've all been waiting for, holding her down for the top spot. Bet y'all never would have guessed this one. MX Simulator. Now this game was made by one dude sort of as a suck it to THQ. Now JLV saw Unleashed and said, yo, I can do better than that. So then MX Simulator was born. The stock bikes and tracks, I mean, they're doo-doo. There's not much more you can say about it, but that's really not where this game shines. It's all about the user-created content, baby! No longer are we doing laps on our RM125 on Rabbit Hill. Nah, dog, we are schmeezing down on some replica pro tracks, or one of JG's old yee-yee tracks with horrible timing gates. And we're not on some blob bike looking like old yee-yee Excite Bike 64. Nah, dog, we are riding on an absolute masterpiece like this. Or repping the militia. Or this. Thanks, Smidley. MX Sim also has a pro racing scene, which is still quite popular. I mean, I personally have tried my hand at some B-Class Nationals last year, and I only was able to make one. And I tried for a C-Class Supercross this year. Didn't even top 40. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the game, pretty baller. But me, personally, nah, dog, I suck. So, yeah, dog, thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Turn on them Post Malone notifications if you have a dinger that is longer than one plank length. See ya.
Now baby, I'm the Ripper, your baby daddy's worst nightmare. Catch me by the Claire, I'll be right there. Niggas copy everything we say. Louis frames, eyes lower than my GPA. Riding and swerving, Kush I'm blow. Doze wide, my trunk bump like Eddie Roll. I don't cake hoes, I never tip the stripper.